Hello, ladies and gents. Hagbard Celine here on another beautiful afternoon. I apologize for my long absence, but I'm going to jump right into it today, and we're going to be doing something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. I'm going to be reading from one of my favorite books when I was growing up, and I think it might explain a lot. The book is titled Politically Correct Bedtime Stories. It's a satire book written in 1994 by one James Finn Garner. Introduction. When they were first written, the stories on which the following tales are based certainly served their purpose: to enrich the patriarchy, to estrange people from their own natural impulses, to demonize evil, and to reward some objective good. However much we might like to, we cannot blame the Brothers Grimm for their insensitivity to women's issues, minority cultures, and the environment. Likewise, in the self-righteous Copenhagen of Hans Christian Andersen, the inalienable rights of mermaids were hardly given a second thought. Today, we have the opportunity, and the obligation, to rethink these classic stories so that they reflect more enlightened times. To that effort, I submit this humble book. While the original title, Fairy Stories for a Modern World, was abandoned for obvious reasons, kudos to my editor for pointing out my heterosexualist bias, I think the collection stands on its own. This, however, is just a start. Certain stories, such as The Duckling That Was Judged on Its Personal Merits and Not on Its Physical Appearance, were deleted for space reasons. I expect I have volumes left in me, and I hope this book sparks the righteous imaginations for other writers and, of course, leaves an indelible mark on our children. If, through omission or commission, I have inadvertently displayed any sexist, racist, culturalist, nationalist, regionalist, ageist, lookist, ableist, sizist, speciest, intellectualist, socio-economist, ethnocentric, phallocentrist, heteropatriarchal, or any other type of bias that has yet unnamed, I apologize, and I encourage your suggestions for reflection. In the quest to develop meaningful literature that is totally free from bias and purged from the influences of its flawed cultural past, I have doubtless made some mistakes. Now, if that doesn't sound like something Justin Trudeau would have said at the beginning of a speech in 2016, I don't know what does. Now, for this, I am going to read one of the shorter stories. There's Cinderella and several others that are just as humorous as this one, but I'm going to read the first one, which is Little Red Riding Hood. And again, remember, this book was published in 1994. Oh, how little the times have changed. Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a young person named Red Riding Hood who lived with her mother on the edge of a large wood. One day, her mother asked her to take a basket of fresh fruit and mineral water to her grandmother's house. Not because this was woman's work, mind you, but because the deed was generous and helped engender a feeling of community. Furthermore, her grandmother was not sick, but rather was in full physical and mental health, and was fully capable of taking care of herself as a mature adult. So, Red Riding Hood set off with her basket through the woods. Many people believed that this forest was a foreboding and dangerous place, and never set foot in it. Red Riding Hood, however, was confident enough in her own budding sexuality that such obvious Freudian imagery did not intimidate her. On the way to grandmother's house, Red Riding Hood was accosted by a wolf, who asked her what was in her basket. She replied, "Some healthful snacks for my grandmother, who is certainly capable of caring for herself as a mature adult." The wolf said, "You know, my dear, it is not safe for a little girl to walk through these woods alone." Red Riding Hood said, "I find your sexist remark offensive in the extreme, but I will ignore it because of your traditional status as an outcast from society, the stress of which has caused you to develop your own entirely valid worldview. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must be on my way." Red Riding Hood walked along the main path, but because his status outside society had freed him from such slavish adherence to linear Western-style thought, the wolf knew a quicker route to Grandma's house. He burst into the house and ate Grandma, an entirely valid course of action for a carnivore such as himself. Then, unhampered by these rigid traditionalist notions of what was masculine and feminine, he put on Grandma's nightclothes and crawled into bed. Red Riding Hood entered the cottage and said, "Grandma, I have brought you some fat-free, sodium-free snacks to salute you in your role as a wise and nurturing matriarch." From the bed, the wolf said softly, "Come closer, child, so that I might see you." Red Riding Hood said, "Oh, I forgot that you were optically challenged as a bat. Grandma, what big eyes you have." "They have seen much and forgiven much, my dear." Grandma, what a big nose you have. Only relatively, of course, and certainly attractive in its own way. It has smelled much and forgiven much, my dear. Grandma, what big teeth you have, the wolf said. I am happy with who I am and what I am, and leapt out of bed. He grabbed Red Riding Hood in his claws, intent on devouring her. Red Riding Hood screamed, not out of alarm at the wolf's apparent tendency towards cross-dressing, of course, but because of his willful invasion of her personal space. Her screams were heard by a passing woodchopper person, or log fuel technician, as he preferred to be called. When he burst into the cottage, he saw Mealy there and tried to intervene. But as he raised his axe, Red Riding Hood and the wolf both stopped. And just what do you think you're doing? Asked Red Riding Hood. The woodchopper person blinked and tried to answer, but no words came to him. Bursting in here like a Neanderthal, trusting your weapon to do your thinking for you, she exclaimed. Sexist! Speciest! How dare you assume that women and wolves can't solve their own problems without a man's help? When she heard Red Riding Hood's impassioned speech, Grandma jumped out of the wolf's mouth, took the woodchopper person's axe, and cut his head off. After this ordeal, Red Riding Hood Grandma and the wolf felt a certain commonality of purpose. They decided to set up an alternative household based on mutual respect and cooperation, and they lived together in the woods, happily ever after. That's it, ladies and gents. That's the little story I wanted to share that was a big part of my childhood, this book right here. And the fact that it has so much of the terminology that has become commonplace today, in spite of the fact that this was indeed written as a parody, it's just not lost on me. As for my long absence, I will make a point to make a video at least once a week, regardless of whether or not I feel like politically engaging, which, for the record, I haven't. I don't have a whole lot of faith in the current political discussion, so I'm not particularly interested in entering into it any longer. I will, however, be attempting to find some fun and lighthearted videos to laugh at, perhaps, and maybe some more readings like this if these are even remotely enjoyed. As usual, thanks for listening, stay safe, good luck, and goodbye.